Hey, Brock and Mike, great job. You guys did a heck of a job this morning. This is the first time since I've been the CEO of our business that I was not the person that kicked it off. And now I need to follow Brock and Mike, which the pressure is definitely on. So it's been a really cool morning. I got to spectate, and I hung on every word that they had to share, and I'm inspired by what they had to share and where we're taking this business. So we've got a really cool segment coming up. I'm personally very invested into this segment, and I hope that all of you find it both entertaining and inspirational. But when I think about what we do as salespeople, and every one of us in this room, we're in sales, whether we're actually out in the territory, leading a plant, leading a discipline, we're supporting any of those efforts, we're all in sales. We're either internally selling or we're externally selling or probably in many cases doing both. And I think one of the best aspects of being in sales is you get to meet people. You get to learn about people, and you expand your network, and you keep getting a chance to get exposed to new people who have new backgrounds and new perspectives and different perspectives. And then they introduce you to someone else and someone else after that, and your network keeps growing. Your world keeps growing in some ways, and in other ways it gets even smaller as you go, as I'll share in a moment. So my wife would say that when are you going to end? When will this end as far as expanding the network? And I'm pretty quick to say never. We're always expanding our network. We're always learning about what other people are up to. And then as a result of that, we get to grow, and hopefully we get to help them grow, and so goes. So 10 years ago, I attended the Winter World family reunion. Stan had invited me to participate, and it's the first one I had ever been at. It was in Orlando. In Winter World, if you've not been to these events, they do one heck of a job putting on the reunion. Every other year they do it. Now it's up to, 2,000 people or so is what we're in Phoenix last August. And it's a really motivating event, high energy, and so the whole time I'm just like, man, they are kicking ass, and they're big, and they're family, and they love doing what they do. Like, this is a great place to be. So about halfway through the event, they started to talk about Winter World Cares and the foundation that they have. And so that really caught my attention. So post the meeting, I asked Stan if he could set up a meeting with Dana Deem. Dana was the president of Winter World at the time. And I said, Stan, I really think we could learn a lot from Winter World and understanding how they approach philanthropic efforts. So they had talked a lot about St. Jude while we were there, as well as Veterans Airlift Command while we were there, and others as well. So we went down to Wilkesboro, spent some time with Dana, and he walked through. He provided us a lot of time and insight, gave us access to their council and how they set everything up. And it was shortly after that that we established our foundation. So, back to the network. Well, the whole reason why the MITRE Foundation, in my opinion, exists is because of that family reunion and saying that looks like it might be one heck of a best practice. Let's go meet with Dana. And Stan and Dana had a long-standing relationship prior to Winter World when Dana was at Lowe's. So that's why he was willing to open up and be transparent about what they were doing, rather. So now we'll fast forward a little bit. It was shortly after we established our foundation that we were, of course, looking for causes that we wanted to get behind. Local outreach was a big part of what we wanted to do, and Gwen and Tony will provide an update on that tomorrow. But we also wanted to have some very specific pillars that we were going to support broadly. And one of those, right from the start, that we had determined we wanted to be a part of was Veterans Affairs. And it wasn't really probably a week or two after that we found Homes for Our Troops. So it was almost 10 years ago, this fall, I believe, is our 10-year anniversary with Homes for Our Troops. And we have some Homes for Our Troops team members with us in the crowd today. And so, veterans causes have been near and dear to us right from the beginning as we've thought about the foundation and its evolution and growth. So now I'll fast forward again. We were fortunate enough to be in a position where the business had earned its way into growing and supporting a little bit different way of travel. And we have a long-standing history in our business, going back to the founder, Toki, our chair right now, and really the founder of the window business as we know it. Pete is an aviator. You heard Mike talk about aviation, so we love flying. So the moment that we could get back into our own airplane again, as soon as we could do that, we did. So in 2020, we reformed MI Flight Department, MITRE Flight Department is what it's now called. And I called up Jim, who was the previous pilot when we had to unfortunately disband our flight department during the Great Recession. Thankfully, our relationship was strong enough that he was willing to reconsider starting up the flight department again. So that was in February of 2020. We received an airplane in end of February 2020. Timing was impeccable. A couple weeks later, no one was traveling. So we had a really nice, shiny asset that we had some debt and got to pay for it, but nonetheless, we weren't flying it. So that was a little scary. But thankfully, we were able to navigate through all of that. And I had asked Jim early on, I said, and Jim, by the way, is retired Army. He's a pilot. And said, Jim, we've got to find a way to not only use this tool to get our people place to place safely and efficiently, our customers in to see our plants as much as what we possibly can, but I also want to make sure that we use this plane to help people. We want to go help children that are fighting disease and get them to the right place to get care. We want to help veterans that are needing to go point to point. And I had learned about Veterans Airlift Command through Window World. And I asked him, I said, why don't you do some research and see what you come up with? Well, he came back about 2 weeks later and said, Matt, I really think we should go with Veterans Airlift Command. And I said, Jim, that's amazing. I hadn't shared that I thought that might be a good organization. I just wanted to see what you'd come back with. Well, fast forward to summer of 21, our family, my kids and Desiree and I, we were heading west to go out to, we were starting to go to Tacoma and then working our way down through Portland and all the California sites and over to Arizona for our Western tour of the Founders Award luncheon. So we were providing meals to every team member for having earned the Founders Award in 2020. So I asked if the kids and Desiree would be willing to go, and they were excited to go and go help serve our team members. So Jim called about a week before and said, hey, Matt, would you be willing to do a Veterans Airlift Command mission en route to Tacoma? And I said, well, sure, that, of course, where we got to go? He said, well, we just got to go down to Frederick, Maryland, then we're going to drop in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and then we'll continue on to Tacoma. So that's the beginning of the story of how we're going to learn about why we met, the folks that are going to come up here momentarily. So because of that Window World reunion, because of the connection with Dana Deem, because of the foundation we established, because of identifying Veterans Affairs as something that we wanted to get behind, we ultimately did a Veterans Airlift Command with a gentleman by the name of Adam Kisielewski. I think that's the first time I was ever brave enough to say your last name on a stage. And that was a really great day for MITRE. We met a man who is not only an extraordinary person, but someone who has served our nation, someone who is a true warrior, someone who is a leader in the community, an amazing husband, a wonderful father, CEO of a thriving and aggressively growing non-for-profit, and he'll talk about that. And I'm so excited and proud to say a friend of our family. So, Sergeant Adam, will you please take the stage?
Wow. Thank you, guys. I'm going to be as brief as I possibly can because here shortly we'll introduce a couple of other veterans who are even more remarkable than than Matt gave me credit for being. But one of the cool things about being an amputee, and there's many drawbacks, but I get to wear shorts to work. Is perfectly acceptable. And I found one of the successful things about wearing shorts as an amputee is you don't have to buy a lot of drinks. I didn't drink, I drank a lot last night, but I had to buy a single drink either at the event or afterward, which is good because the drinks at the Gaylord, I think, cost an arm and a leg, which would have been a big problem for a guy like me. Thank you. Kind of the other cool thing about being an amputee, like Matt alluded to, is you get to meet some really cool and remarkable people. I got on the flight with Matt going out to Wisconsin and Oshkosh, and I didn't know much about MI Windows. I just bought a bunch of doors in my house for Window World, and I knew that they were a distributor. And hit my buddy Ryan up from Window World and said, hey, I'm going to be flying with MI Windows. This guy, Matt DeSoto, I think is going to be flying. Do you know anything about him? He said, are you kidding? Matt ended up being college roommates with Matt, and he gave me a whole bunch of stories that I could leverage against Matt if he said anything embarrassing about me at any point in time, which he hasn't done yet. And he even pronounced my name correctly, or at least as far as I know. I'm not even sure I'm saying it right anymore. But one of the cool things about flying with the Veterans Airlift Command is I got to become one of their advisory board members, and I'm also on the board of directors for Homes for Our Troops. So there's two different organizations that you guys already supported that I'm pretty deeply affiliated with, and I wanted to come up just for a few minutes and talk a little bit about both of those organizations. I've got notes so I don't screw up the numbers as I often do, but Homes for Our Troops, one of you guys' national partners since 2015. You guys have helped raise over $870,000 in either in-kind donations or direct financial support to date so far. Homes for Our Troops has built 354 homes, and 76 are underway currently already in 46 states. But of those 354 homes, MITRE has windows in 130 of them, so about a third of the homes. That's if I could clap for you guys, I would. I appreciate you guys giving me a hand. But an outstanding organization. They build and donate specially adapted homes to guys like me, which really gives us a leg up. For some of you guys got that. It gives us a leg up for our future. I wouldn't be working as a nonprofit executive if not for having a mortgage-free home. So it really enabled me to do what I wanted to do and try to pay it forward, give back. The Veterans Airlift Command is a network of private pilots that have planes much like the one that you guys see in the picture there that fly disabled veterans wherever they need to go for medical or compassionate purposes. Over 20,000 missions they've flown, or passengers that they've flown so far to date. So an incredibly great organization. You guys have done, I think, 9 flights so far, if I'm not mistaken. But I know that number is ever growing, and you guys have supported the VAC financially as well. But through both of those organizations, I got to meet Matt and his wife Desiree, and they learned a little bit more about my organization, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But NPLB Outdoors, which started in 2004, is a hunting and fishing organization. They're just trying to get disabled veterans into the outdoors and show veterans that people in America care about them and want to do what they can to support them. It's never really been about hunting or fishing. It's about getting disabled veterans into the outdoors in an environment where they can connect with other disabled veterans that are going through similar challenges. So when I came on board in 2018, I said, hey, hunting and fishing's great. I love doing that, but there's a big group of veterans that we're not serving that we really ought to, that aren't interested in hunting or fishing. And we need to expand our program to try to do some things that are, still outdoors, still in line with, our vision or mission, but just, connect with a different group of folks. And mountaineering ended up being one of those things that we wanted to do. So we started with a couple of local hikes. I think we took, a few vets on the Appalachian Trail, did a 4-day hike there. And one of my buddies called me up and said, hey, you think you might want to try climbing Kilimanjaro? And I said, well, that sounds like an interesting idea. I'm certainly not one to turn those sorts of opportunities down, but also unless it's a work thing, it's one of those things that's easy to kind of push aside. And I think you guys have probably all heard Matt say something to the effect that the difference between a dream and a reality is a timeline, right? A deadline, deliverable. And if I make it a work thing, it makes it hard to put it as a dream and just never really attack it and conquer it. So I said, yeah, let's do this, but let's try to bring a couple of veterans along and make it an interesting experience. Without having a couple of veterans that were rogered up to come do this, I don't think I would have been so motivated to start looking for supporters to fund this type of opportunity, and I'm not sure if we would have been as close to the MITRE Foundation as we are today. But with that, I think it would be more beneficial to have all of us come up here and talk about our experience in Kilimanjaro. So Steve, Cam, Tony, Matt, if you guys could join me up here. We'll just do kind of a Q&A, and hopefully you guys will learn a little bit more about our experience.
Howdy.
Oh boy. This is going to be fun. I'll sit here. You sit here.
So on my far left here, this tall guy with awesome hair is Captain Cameron West. He's a Marine, retired in 2000. When did you retire?
In the 2000s, something like that.
I'm getting to be an old man. I told you numbers weren't always my best. And then Steve Curry, Army Sergeant, retired. Hell of a good guy. And you guys all know Matt.
All right. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Here we go. I am no news journalist or TV personality, so we will do the best we can. I'm going to ask these guys a bunch of questions. Kind of got 3 sets of questions. Pre-military, so learn what these guys were like before they got into the military. Post-accident, as you can see, they're all dealing with some things that are a lot more challenging than not getting that window order next week. So learn a little bit about that and how they overcome it and how they not only overcome but thrive. And then specifically, we'll talk through Kilimanjaro and the awesome hike that they made earlier this year. Before we get started, and I was talking to Cam a little before we came in here, clearly he has great taste in hair. So
So does he.
so
does he.
There's a few individuals in the crowd here. We won't mention any names. We'll just call him Dan Dullivan to keep it anonymous. But Cam, what would you say to people like Dan Dullivan that think maybe long hair is not appropriate for a business setting?
Jealousy is not an attractive attribute. And if I could give you some or let you borrow some, I would, but I can't, so I won't. My long hair, and everybody's different, lets me connect to my feminine side. With 3 small children, being a stay-at-home dad when I don't get dragged to Africa by people I used to call friends, it does make me softer so that also when I'm in a work environment, I can connect. We can talk about shampoo, conditioner, post-shower hair products, and that's something that's pretty important to me and, of course, to many females in the room. But also with that, what I just described was empathy or an understanding of someone who's maybe not exactly like you. And I'm kind of taking the joke now to more of a serious situation that I took very serious in the Marine Corps as an officer in the infantry, was to be able to understand other people that you are either working with that are above you or below you in the rank structure and the chain of command. Because as these gentlemen know, and you guys know, everybody's from all different walks of life. You have inner city kids joining this service. You have country boys out in the Midwest. You have guys out on the West Coast that have never left the state of California. And when you come together, you're all focusing on the same mission and the same goal. And with that, you have to be able to you try to understand each other, but you also try to look through someone else's eyes and see their perspective in life and the shoes that they walk in. So that's why I have long hair. So I can see through a woman's eyes.
He's also pretty good at identifying with homeless veterans. He understands them as well.
Yeah. Hey, spooning's okay if it's cold outside, all right? Yeah, trust me.
South real fast.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm back in that tent again.
yeah,
Because of the spooning?
Right, yeah, it's difficult.
yeah.
Just wanna warm up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you
Yes, sir.
for a little bit of clarity for the hair challenged out there. Back to a serious question, and any one of you three, and I know we got a couple type A personalities up here, so if you got to like fight to answer questions, feel free. My money's on Cam, but anyway. Tell us a little bit about life before the military, kind of what were you like growing up, how you ended up in the military, how things were going pre-accident.
Yeah, I started in the Marine Corps just prior to the 9/11 attacks. I was in high school my junior year. Really was, just kind of a pragmatic decision. I thought I wanted to go into law enforcement. Knew I couldn't really do that until I turned 21. My grades in high school were not spectacular, so college wasn't a great opportunity for me. And then I joined, after the 9/11 attacks happened while I was in high school. I knew, even more that this is what I wanted to do. So I expedited my high school graduation. I think was graduated in January of 2002 and in boot camp by March of 2002. Ended up doing a few different things in the Marine Corps that kind of sidetracked me from where I thought I would be, but ultimately ended up in Iraq in 2005, kicking in doors, which is exactly what you'd expect Marine operators to do back then. And unfortunately kicked in the wrong door. It had a 97-pound artillery round rigged to the door, so when we opened it up, it killed the lieutenant that was with me, James Cathy. I was fortunate enough to make it out alive, but got pretty banged up. Lost my leg, my arm. Almost lost my left leg. It was definitely a challenge.
I think I might be like the country boy that Cam was talking about. I grew up in North Carolina, out in the country. I think in high school, I wasn't doing the best that I could either. And then I realized at some point I didn't have the structure that I needed. I also didn't have the maturity at that point to give myself that structure. And as I was looking to try to find, somebody else to give me that, I don't know what happened. One day I just drove to the recruiter station and I said, if somebody's going to tell me what to do, it'll definitely be these guys. Went in, hook, line, sinker. They had me as soon as I walked through the door. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but 14 weeks later, coming out of boot camp, definitely had more structure in my life than I'd actually asked for. Luckily, it's turned out well. I can't take anything back.
Turned out well, everybody.
Yeah.
Turned out well. That's his plan of turning out well. Yeah. And he's the pilot with the bad grades, so he's not flying home.
So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up in the military. I mean, 9/11 happened while I was in high school, but again, I was really immature at that point in my life, and that was just one of those things that was happening to other people. I was patriotic, but that's not why I joined the military. It just kind of happened, but I'm glad it did. I ended up a year later in Afghanistan. A year and a half later, I was in Iraq and drove over an IED and lost my left leg, and that was almost 15 years ago.
Where will this go? No. I was pretty much on the Marine Corps track from a very young age. My grandfather was in the Corps during World War II in Korea. And I think I wrote a note to myself when I was 10, like, hey, this is what you're gonna do, like, don't punk out. And I didn't. I was very fortunate to get good grades, have a supportive mother and father. I attended Stephen's favorite college, North Georgia College and State University at the time. It's a senior military college. It's Army-based, so they give me a hard time for being an Army ROTC cadet, which it's one of the best leadership programs I've ever attended. It's in Dahlonega, North Georgia mountains. And then I commissioned in the Marine Corps. But from a young age, it was a one-track. This is what I'm gonna do. I don't care, what distractions come in and go out. I mean, girls, jobs, whatever. they were not going to penetrate the azimuth that I was on, the true north that I was on. And so that's how that occurred, where I got commissioned and was fortunate to be in a very decorated battalion, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines in San Diego, Camp Pendleton, Southern California. And yeah, we went to a hot spot, the most dangerous place in the world at the time, staying in Afghanistan. And yeah, we always did foot patrols and just had an unlucky moment, an unlucky day, sadly. Lost my best Marine, James Belk, who my children are named after. And yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world either. It was very successful, and just because you have a bad day, or you take a hit, or you have a scar, or you have a wound, or you're missing something, you're going to leave this world with less than what you came into it with, which is a pretty heavy, thing to think about. Whether it's an appendage, whether it's your vision, whatever it is, but it's worth it because the goal of what I wanted to do and what other men and women were doing on the same track and the same mission and the same azimuth as me made it worth it. And again, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Awesome. And building off of that, so you've overcome a lot of adversity, and again, we think about like missing an order or having a back order in the plant, and it really doesn't compare to what you're dealing with day in and day out, just doing things that we take for granted are a lot more challenging for you. But how do you keep overcoming, and what keeps you motivated to not only keep moving, but literally excel in everything you're doing?
I think for most of us, I think a lot of it's having a good support network around us, and we're all dads. I think we all want to show our kids that when you have a hurdle come your way, it doesn't necessarily need to define you. In fact, it's more important how you respond to those types of things. But when so many people are looking out for you along the way, it's kind of hard to fail. I think that's kind of my credit to success.
I'd say from early on, well, I went into that last deployment kind of with a negative mindset. Things had really ramped up in Iraq. So I kind of had it in my head, like I either was going to come back with some serious physical changes, or I just wasn't going to come back, period. Because the unit that we were replacing, they had lost a bunch of people, had a bunch of people get injured. So I just kind of went into it with that mindset. And then I think it was 4 months later when I got injured, it was like, oh, well, this is exactly what I expected. I just thought it was going to take longer. Which maybe, that turned out to be a good mindset. It worked out really well. Because I got back home and I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. It was just kind of like, what am I going to do next? Also, as soon as I hit Walter Reed, I started seeing other guys. I had lost, the lower half of my left leg. It's a pretty traumatic thing. Before the war, you didn't see a bunch of amputees just running around. I'd never met an amputee before in my life. So I was like, this is, pretty rough stuff. But you roll into Walter Reed and you see, okay, well, this guy's missing more of his leg. This guy's missing his leg and his arm. I was in physical therapy one of the first couple of days, and they rolled in one of the first quadruple amputees. And it's really hard to feel sorry for yourself when you're surrounded with people like you, and then people that are just way worse off than you. And there's always somebody out there, no matter, if you're talking about amputees, you're talking about financial issues, any kind of problem you could possibly have, there's always somebody out there that's got it worse than you do. And if you keep that in the back of your head, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for yourself. And to the extent, some of what Adam hit on, when everybody's rooting for you, it's real hard to let yourself down and let those people down. We've had people backing us since day one, just want to see us get up and start walking again, move forward to that next step in our life, whether it's employment or sports, whatever it is. And so it's not so much of not wanting to let myself down as it is not wanting to let those other people down around me. That's pretty much what's kept me going.
Nice. And to piggyback off of that a little bit, you guys are pretty cool cats, super smart, super inspirational. How do you manage your time? I suspect you're getting requests 24/7. How do you pick the right option that doesn't make sense for you to invest in?
I think everybody, and I'm sure all of you do, in your professional settings and in your private settings, you have a priority list. And even if it's not written down, you have it in your head. You go to sleep with it at night and you wake up with it in the morning. You have a priority list of what you have to get accomplished that day, that week, or that month. That priority list needs to be pretty specific and pretty honed in on what you want to be. And I don't want to get too philosophical, but you have to figure out what you want to do while you're here. And right now, your MITRE is here, and you're here for MITRE, and you're here for each other. So this morning, or this 3-day event, you have a priority list of what you need to accomplish. And that top priority, that top bullet takes first priority. And if there's a bullet 3 or 4 down that you would rather do, but it would be less efficient or productive or effective, but it's easier, then guess which priority bullet you should do? The one that's higher on the priority list, of course, but the one that's more difficult that you actually don't want to do. A lot of times, if there's something that I get asked for, which is very rarely, like this is out of pocket for me. These good-looking cats are all over the country, but I look at it and I say, you know, do I want to do this? And if I do, great. And if I don't, why don't I want to do this? Is it because it's not benefiting anybody, or is it because it might be difficult? If it's not benefiting anybody and I'm the only one that's going to benefit, it's probably not going to be on the top of my priority list. It's just not. If it's something that could benefit somebody and I don't want to do it because I don't want to travel, I don't want to be away from my children, I don't want to be on the road, then I'm going to do it because of the first reason. It's benefiting somebody. And if you make decisions like that, where you actually face the things that you don't want to do, and you do those things, and you wake up every day, and you know there's 1 or 2 things you need to do that day, and you don't want to do it, but you do it, at the end of that day, you're going to feel good about yourself, you're going to feel good about your day, and that's what instills confidence for you to make a better decision tomorrow. So that's how I make my decisions. I have a priority list in my head. I write it down. Before tomorrow, I will write down everything I'm going to do tomorrow, tonight, on a piece of notebook paper. Not my phone, not my computer, not my calendar. I write it on a piece of notebook paper, and it's on my kitchen table. And that's how I make decisions. And if at the end of the day I only got 70% of my priority list done, it was the most important 70%. Whether it was calling your boss and admitting a failure, whether it was missing a sale, whether it was maybe getting frustrated at my kids because something happened, that's okay. You can learn from it and grow from that and fix it tomorrow. But at the end of the day, you will have completed the most important side of your priority list. So that's how I do it.
Awesome. You've experienced a lot of success, obviously. What do you attribute your success to?
I think for me personally, it kind of goes back to what I said before, is I've got so many people invested in me at this point. I mean, I got injured in 2006. So it's been 15, we're coming up on 16 years. I don't know, I'm not good with math, but
Pilot also, just so you guys know.
I've had so many people invested in me since I got injured that I just don't want to let those people down, whether it's my parents, my wife and my kids, people from the hospital, people that I've met along the way from different veterans organizations, Homes for Our Troops, MPLB. They've put a lot into me, and I want to continue to be a success story, so these people in these organizations can say, hey, here's this guy who did all these great things, and it's not so much for me. I'm not going to go out there and preach to you guys about the things I've done, because I don't think it's that extraordinary, but these other people, they draw inspiration off that, and I find that gratifying, and like I said, I just don't want to let these people down, so I just, even kind of what Cam said, there's things that I don't necessarily want to do. I can tell you the first time Homes for Our Troops asked me to speak in front of a group of people, it was probably a quarter of what's here, and I was deathly afraid of public speaking. I skipped so many classes in high school and in college that had to do with speaking. But they asked me to do it, and I knew it wasn't for me, and it was going to benefit them and help get their message out. So I wrote a bunch of stuff on a phone, and I sat there and I just read it verbatim. The second time they asked me to do it, and it was like, okay, I think I remember most of what I said before. And then every time I did it after that, it just became easier. And again, I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I know it benefits other people. It draws inspiration for some people, and that's what keeps me going.
Awesome. And you've all got big goals. What's your vision for the future, both personally and professionally?
I think, like I said, we all, do well having, benchmarks and something to work towards. For the last year, it was getting prepared for Kilimanjaro. So we're all doing our day-to-day, activities, working, family, that sort of thing. But we had to get on a, treadmill or, bike or go out for a hike, because we didn't want to be the one to fall out during the hike. I think our next goal, or my next goal personally, this fall, Steve and I are both pilots. We're going to try to raise some money for the Veterans Airlift Command to fly to 48 states in less than 48 hours. The world record right now is something like 4 or 5 days. So it's a very obtainable goal, but that's the next big milestone for me.
Sadly, I mentioned the Baton Death March. If anybody knows what that is, it's a marathon through the desert of White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico. It's in March of next year. I did it when I was 19 with a team of 5 cadets at that Army ROTC college that Steve so much loves. And we did really well. We got gold, heavy rucksack category. So I thought it'd be cool 20 years later to go back there again, drag a couple used-to-be friends with me, and just really, it kind of goes back to my ideology, or like my, how I look at life. It's going to be a terrible 10 hours. It's going to be a terrible 10 hours. A third of the course is through sand, a third is on asphalt, and a third is like compact dirt in the desert. It's going to be very, very painful, and we're going to have to train to get up to that point, hiking and running. But at the end of that, it's going to be all worth it, just like Kilimanjaro was. So Adam's already rogered up. Steve's pushing it through his secretary from the top down. We'll see. But that's something that's on the horizon.
Awesome. Now specific to Kilimanjaro, and Adam, you mentioned that someone approached you about the idea. Where did it come from, and why Kilimanjaro?
Yes, so one of my friends, Dan Harris, he and I met doing some sport fishing tournaments for disabled veterans down in Mexico. Had approached me, and we talk about capitalizing on opportunities and leveraging relationships. When you have friends that bring this sort of thing up, some of the people in your life it's just kind of hard to say no to, and Dan was one of those guys in this case. He floated the idea. I said it sounds like fun, but I wanted to make sure it was like a realistic goal. I said let me see if we can get a couple of veterans that would be interested in doing it. I worked really hard for some vets that were doing something to pay it forward. We're really inspirational guys. Unfortunately, neither of them were available, so I got these two instead.
Yeah, I was like 4th down on the list, just so you guys know.
I really wasn't sure, how their wives would feel about it. I wasn't sure how my wife would feel about it. But to all of our surprise, I think they were just eager to either one get us out of the house or get us back into a workout mode. But for whatever reason, they were all very supportive of it. We were able to raise the money to go do this project, and the rest just kind of came together.
Nice. All right, first question for Matt. What inspired the foundation to partner with MPLB, and why did you choose to personally go along on the hike up Kilimanjaro?
So I referenced the flight earlier that we had out to Oshkosh. And by the way, Adam was going there to meet other pilots and that flew aircraft similar to ours, or probably in many cases larger. And it's a huge like reunion of pilots. It's a big fly-in. It's an amazing event. And so he was going there, obviously meeting us and getting transported, but heading out there to recruit more people for Veterans Airlift Command. So there's a theme here of sort of always at work and always thinking forward. So on that flight, I said, hey, we have a foundation event that we hold in, and at that point it was going to be the first live event in over a year, that's in Hershey. Would you have any interest in coming to that and speaking? Because we're always looking for people that can get up on stage and provide the right message, set the right tone for those that are hopefully going to support the organization that night. So, I thought that was a great way to sort of continue our building our relationship. So Adam comes there and does a hell of a job, like bang up job. Brock referenced earlier that our customers outgive our suppliers, and that was the first time that our customers did that, and Sergeant Adam was our speaker that night. So needless to say, I'm sure you're already feeling it, inspirational. And so I'll carry that forward. It was probably early March, early April, I forget the month of 2022. So a few months after the event, I get this note that says, hey, you around tomorrow? I'm just going to be riding my bike up through your area. So Adam didn't get into this minor detail. Post his injury, he became a private pilot and also started to ride. Were you riding a motorcycle before? No. No. So learned how to ride a motorcycle post all this as well. So he's like, I'm just going to go for a casual ride up to the countryside. Thought I'd come see you. So I'm going somewhere. Everything's very intentional with Adam. He's about the best salesperson I've ever met. I'd put him up against any of us in the room. I think he could lead a sales training himself. So he shows up. He's like, let's just have some lunch. So Gwen and I are having lunch with him, thinking we're just catching up, like in general with a buddy. Like, it's good to see you in the fall. And what are you up to? How's your family? He came there with a very specific agenda. And he didn't have any materials. He just spoke. He's like, we got this thing we're doing through NPLB, and I don't know if you guys might have any interest in it or not. I'm not sure if it would even be in your wheelhouse or not to want to support it. But if you did, it might be a cool thing. A couple of us are going to go get to the top of Kilimanjaro, and maybe MITRE would want to be a sponsor. I don't know. I don't even know what that would look like. He was so nonchalant about it. Just like, yeah. I'm like, I guess, well, yeah. What are you thinking? Like, what type of dollars? And so he threw out a number. All right, yeah, okay, I get. Let us process this. So he walked out the front door of our support center in Graz. And now he's getting on the bike, and there he goes, charging off in his big Harley, making tons of noise, and everybody's paying attention because not every day you get to see a double amputee riding off on a Harley down the road. And I walked back in, and I said, to Gwen, there's no damn way we can say no to that. So clearly we're going to be a part of the Kilimanjaro experience. Yeah, Adam came here with a sales pitch, and he succeeded, although he'll never call it a sales pitch. So that's the first, was just like, how could you not, when you learned about what he was leading and ultimately what NPLB was going to do, and supported that. So then why did I become a part of it? And Desiree hiked the mountain as well. We're at the event this past October, so I say, Adam, why don't you come up and join us at the foundation event again in Hershey? Yeah, sure, I'll be there. So bullshitting over having a beer or two, and I think that's been on our vision board, Kilimanjaro. That would be really neat to do it. So I can't wait to hear about the experience. So the next morning, we're at the golf course. Those that were there, you remember, it was pouring down rain. And Adam and I were talking for a few moments. He said, if you have any interest in going on this mission, maybe you would want to go with us. That would be really neat. You could come with, and we could all, sort of, get to the top together. It'd be a pretty cool experience. So this was October the 5th. The trip was departing on January the 29th. So needless to say, the training was starting to compress a little bit as far as timeline goes. So I say to Desiree, she has literally on her mirror in our bathroom, like the Mount Kilimanjaro as part of the vision board before this conversation. So I floated by her like a day or two later and said, hey, so I know we're really busy, you got a lot going on, but what do you think about going to hike Kilimanjaro this year instead of like a year or two from now? And she looked at me like, what the are you thinking? And like, we can't, there's no way we're gonna get trained in time. Like, yeah, sure there is. I'm like, we'll figure it out. There's gotta be a good training regimen. So long story short, we end up there, and Really, the driver was Adam. I mean, there's a common theme I think that all of us have with you is that we look, you're a leader, and so he drives us to think bigger and do things different as a result. So to have wanted to do it, first of all, great, awesome. But then to have a chance to do it with three warriors and wonderful human beings like are in front of us today, you can't buy that. So it was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Awesome. Cam, and this is coming from Adam, I did not say this. You arguably had the most significant physical challenges due to your injuries. What did you do to prepare and train for the adventure?
Well, I didn't need 5 guys for 6 months. Yeah, so when did we get the notice? Like, was it April?
Probably about 9 months.
Yeah, about 9 months out. Just spent every day kind of like what I spoke of earlier, punishing myself physically. I knew that being above the knee amputee, AK, you exert 60, 70% more energy than someone who's able-bodied. Like these two individuals, totally 100% able-bodied.
We joke around and tell Steve he's got a paper cut.
Yeah, they didn't, the government didn't even give him military didn't even give him a Purple Heart. But no, I just really, every day I punished myself. Every day, there's no days you can skip, you're not allowed to, unless something really, you're traveling for 16 hours, but cycling 20 miles a day, hiking 2 to 3 times a week, doing a little bit of weights, but I knew that I had to be very, very fit and very light, which is kind of the opposite of what I've been doing my whole life of like weightlifting and trying to look big and strong. But I actually took that ideology and actually became strong in a way that more mobile, more flexible, can cover more terrain, distance, things of that nature. Swam a bunch, so those are the things that I did. And I looked at Kilimanjaro like an impossible feat that I was going to attempt. And that's kind of how I look at when I say yes to things, even though I don't want to do it, or if someone asks me about a challenge, I don't know if I'll complete the Baton Death March. Adam and I and Steve or whoever joins. I don't know if we'll be able to complete a marathon within 1 day in the sand. But it's worth attempting because it honors those service members in the beginning of World War II that were forced to march 100 miles. And I think there were about 60,000 of them, Philippine soldiers and U.S. soldiers, and many of them died, over a third of them died, and they were POWs for the entire war. It's worth doing what I'm going to attempt to do or what we're going to attempt to do on that day and suffering and possibly failing because it honors them. And it's kind of the same way that I, look at my daily life. It's worth doing Kilimanjaro. Even if you fail, it's worth doing it because at the top, we were able to honor fellow veterans, people that have supported us, MITRE and other organizations, Homes for Our Troops, No Person Left Behind, Outdoors. We're able to honor those people that make it so that we can be successful in whatever we're willing to take on, whatever challenge we're willing to say yes to. So as long as you're doing that and training hard for it, then there is no failure. You may not complete the race, but there's no failure in saying yes and giving it your best. So,
awesome.
Sir.
Steve, what was the single toughest day of the climb, and what made it so tough, and how did you ultimately persevere?
For me, it was definitely the final summit day. We talked about this on the mountain. We took 2 very different approaches to getting ready for Kilimanjaro. Cam looked at it as this, huge challenge that, he may or may not be able to complete, and then he trained like hell for it. I need to know details about everything. I like to dive deep into stuff. I really want to know what I'm getting into. And to my detriment, I looked up a lot of YouTube videos, did a lot of research on the internet, and saw other people that were doing this. I'm like, if he can do it, I'm pretty sure. I'm obviously going to train, but I'm pretty sure if he can do it, I can do it. So I may have not trained as hard as Cam did, But I knew the whole thing was going to be a slug. I mean, you're climbing the tallest mountain in Africa. I'm not a hiker. I don't hike. I don't go out and hike on the weekends. I think I've done 2 hikes in the past year, and one was the tallest mountain in Colorado, and the other one was Kilimanjaro. And Adam dragged me up both of them. But summit day, we got up at, 4 o'clock in the morning. Took us, I think, 6 or 9 hours to get to the summit.
To peak,
And it was just slow and steady all the way. And I was like, you know what, that really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I didn't get a headache. I'm not sore. I'm winded because we're at 19,000 feet, but it really wasn't as bad as I thought until we turned around and started going back down. And then, the shit hit the fan after that. Walking downhill, I think, is always bad for everybody. It's hard on your knees, it's hard on your back, but especially for amputees walking downhill, it's just different. It's hard, it's painful. And I would have rather gone from the bottom to the top 10 more times than having to walk back down that little bit from the summit. I think Adam got down, probably took a shower, had a snack, took a nap. Before I made it halfway down, I got back down, walked right past these guys in the tent, didn't say a word, went back and just laid in my cot and cried for like an hour. Honestly, my leg hadn't hurt that bad in probably 10 years. And I don't think I wasn't expecting that on the way back down. So for me, that descent from the summit was the absolute worst.
Thanks. Adam, what was the most inspiring moment you saw on the climb?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a whole bunch of moments that come to mind. Summit Day was, I think, tougher than I was expecting. On our way up, I remember seeing somebody get escorted down. There was this lady had, a guy on both sides of her just basically carrying her down. It was like she was hammered drunk. I saw a couple of you guys last night getting carried that same way.
Got some Kilimanjaro vets out there.
Yeah, it's low oxygen.
Low oxygen.
Yeah.
But, when I saw that, it was kind of like, well, this is for real. There's consequences, to pushing, past being uncomfortable up here. And I wasn't going to push either these guys or Matt or his wife because I didn't want, to be responsible, for getting one of them, hurt, or worse. And I remember we got up to the top. There's 3 different peaks. The first one, congratulations, you've made it. You're technically, a successful summit, but there's still 2 more if you really want to go for the gold that we needed to get to. And we made it to the first one. Everybody's tired, but still pushing through. We got to the second one. Matt's wife Desiree was starting to really struggle. The effects of low oxygen were catching up to her. It was pretty clear that if anybody wasn't going to be able to make it up, like she would probably be at the top of the list at that point. And even mentioned, I think, to Matt, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it to the final summit. And I said, well, if you want, we can take a group photo here, and that way, if you got to get down, you get down. Matt was, willing to push his wife a little bit more for whatever reason. I'm not suggesting anything here at all.
Where's Layman at? That piece doesn't get gets deleted.
But for one reason or another, he pushed her, and she kept going, and we got to within, I don't know, there's probably 300 or 400 yards left, and at 300 or 400 yards doesn't sound like it's very far, and it's all incremental, but it was to the point where I didn't know, if any of us were going to be able to make it up there. I mean, it was within sight, literally. But Desiree had hit a wall. She wasn't going to be able to make it any further. And I don't know, the conversation that you guys had, but she mustered. She pushed through what was very obvious, discomfort and beyond that. I mean, like, she seriously, pushed herself. And that was probably the most inspiring, moment I saw on the mountain.
Awesome.
Made it.
Should.
Yeah, next question for Matt to piggyback off of that. Were you concerned that someone might not make it? Sounds like maybe. Or not, I'm not sure, maybe you won't. And what was your mindset during the climb and on specifically that summit?
Well, Adam brought up one thing that came to my mind, that that story of the lady being walked down was not helpful as far as mental strength. But right before that, we had Adam had invited along a team doc, Chris, to come with us. So the whole way up, right, the few days we had been spending to get to the last camp before you summit, Chris, every night and every morning, it felt like we were getting a briefing, like of what to expect, what you really needed to do, hydration, and take this for headaches, and checking our eyes and stuff at night to make sure all was good. So it was a great call on Adam's part to have a doc with us. So we're halfway up the summit, and we're taking a break, and I look over, and there's Chris hurling. And like, wow, that's interesting. So he's like, oh man, I don't know what's going on. Well, this continued up the mountain. I'm like, well, this is just freaking great. The guy that's got a lot of experience, he had been to Everest Base Camp, 3 or 4 times, I forget. He knows exactly what to expect. He's obviously probably is taking the right things to help overcome whatever we might be dealing with. And now I'm seeing him puke. So that being said, those 2 nuances of the, in the way moments, if you will, Desiree had said a couple of times on the way up, she goes, well, what if I don't make it? Like, what happens? Like, I don't know. I'm second guessing myself. And I said, well, it's okay. Like, just go to the point where you can't go anymore, and then you'll know, when you got to stop. But at least, let's just sort of take it day by day here, step by step, not overthink this. Because at the moment you overthink it, your mind is going to get in the way, and then it doesn't really matter what your muscles can do. And I said, furthermore, all you need to do, and we were set up in like this sort of tent village. There was a central tent where we had our meals and could catch up. But then everybody sort of, Desiree and I had a tent, and Adam and Dan and Cam and Steve had their own tent, sort of like this all connected tent village is what we refer to it. And so I said to her the one evening, I'm a little concerned too. I mean, I don't want to like do this and not summit, but at the same time, I'm only going to go as far as where I can go. Furthermore, all you need to do is look out into either of those tents and realize that they're fully committed to doing this, and they're going to get there. I have no doubt that they're going to get there. So let that be the drive and the inspiration to take you to, just a little bit further. It's definitely out of our comfort zone. None of us, to your point, Steve, we don't hike. I mean, this isn't something like we're activists as far as being expedition folks, and maybe we are now. I'm not sure, but that wasn't in our wheelhouse. But we're now there. So what the hell's the option? Like, you got to go. Like, what are you going to do? Hang back? You're not going to watch TV and eat bonbons. That stuff didn't exist. So we might as well try. So there was no point at which I actually personally thought that nobody would, that any of us wouldn't summit. I knew that we would all summit because you just sort of inherently knew that the nature of the people that we were with. We had an amazing support group that was there to help us. But no doubt there were some points along the way that there was a little bit of question. Now, I would also share with you the night before, we were up about 2 or 3 in the morning to get going at 4. And she was really nervous, and she looked at me, she's like, oh, man, what am I going to do? I'm so scared. I was like, let's just get going. I said, furthermore, we've already, we're going to contribute $19,341 each if we get to the summit, to the foundation. So you got to make it now. Like, the check's already written. So I'll explain more about that later. Perfect.
And Steve did actually bring bonbons. I didn't.
Oh, I didn't. No,
He's keeping them for himself. Yeah, I didn't share them.
Yeah, I get it.
I didn't share them with anybody.
That was what was in that second bag. Perfect.
Steve, what did your wife think about you doing this, and was she concerned about the risks?
Apparently not concerned enough. When Adam reached out to me, he called me for something else, and then very nonchalantly, kind of like he approached Chris, hey, by the way, have you ever thought about climbing Kilimanjaro? No, absolutely not. But he said, we're thinking about doing this. I think it'll be really awesome. Think about it. And I said, all right, I'll think about it. And I thought 2 things. 1, I'm going to go look it up and see if this is even, and 2, is my wife going to let me do this? Because this sounds absolutely insane. And I was really banking on my wife saying, absolutely not. Like, there's no way in hell I'm letting you go across the world with Adam to go do this. And unfortunately, like a lot of other people that we've had in our lives, my wife supports she supports everything that I do. Within reason, which apparently this isn't within reason, but I went to her and I said, hey, Adam wants to know if I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with him next year. What do you think about that? I think it's, we're going to be gone for at least 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. And she said, I'll support you whenever you do. And I said, gosh darn it, like that's not the answer I wanted. And to be honest, my wife's kind of like Cam. She doesn't really research stuff. She just looks at, she looks at a challenge at face value. So she had no idea what I was getting myself into either. We didn't really talk about it a whole lot. So I think in her mind, what she saw was me going and climbing Mount Everest, up on the top of this like icy crevasse, like covered in gear, like dead bodies all over the mountain. But she didn't really say that to me. But I think the biggest struggle that she had mentally was the fact that I was going back over to that side of the world. I hadn't been over there since 2006. The last time I went over there, it didn't really work out that well. So she didn't tell me this until I'd gotten back that, she was like, I didn't know if you were going to go over there and summit and be, super successful, if you were going to go over there and get sick and not summit, or if you were going to go over there and never come home. She just kind of had that in the back of her head, which luckily she didn't tell me that until after I got home. But again, she supports everything that I do. This is the third time she's let me leave the country with Adam. And she helped me stay on track as far as getting ready. Because again, I kind of slacked off in the beginning. I looked at a bunch of stuff online and said, this is going to be hard, but all these other people have done it. We'll see how it is when we get there. And every week she was like, you got to make sure you're working out. You got to make sure you're in the gym. I'll take the kids to swim practice so you can get in the gym and make sure you're working out. So she really backed me up, but I don't think she was too sure about how things were going to end up.
Nice. Cam, tell us about the mayor of Kilimanjaro.
Oh, yeah. So when we were doing the trek, we were on the mountain for 8 days. We summited at the end of day 6. But no one's going up Mount Kilimanjaro without porters. It's actually illegal. So if you're going up as like a single person, you might have like 2 or 3 porters. One of those will be a guide. These porters are mountain climbers. They live on that mountain a majority of the year, the Tanzanian people, and nobody would really be able to climb that mountain. Number 1, they'd get lost. Number 2, they wouldn't know what they're actually facing. Number 3, those porters bring much more gear than the individual that's asking to be accompanied by a porter. So no one's going to summit Kilimanjaro without the support of the porters. So I just have to give, and I know these guys will speak the same, mad props to the Tanzanian people and the porters of Kilimanjaro. Beautiful people, full of joy and love and smiles and laughter. And during the hike, the 6 days up and the 2 days down, we'd get a hike in, and then we'd have some downtime. Everybody would, rest up. We'd have a meal, kind of hang out, take care of our legs, prepare for the next day. And we would kind of hang out and be groovy. And I was lucky enough to be able to hang out with some of the Tanzanian porters, and a lot of them don't speak English, so you might have an assistant guide or the guide that kind of translates it for you or whatnot. And one day I think Matt caught a picture or something, but they were down at the tent, and me and about 15 porters were up near this big sign, and I brought some, granola bars or whatever and passed them out, and some gum. And I was just kind of laying there. I had my leg off. I was in crutches and just laying there enjoying the sun. They're talking in Swahili, and I'm just enjoying my time in Africa.
I think they were making fun of your hair. pretty sure.
Yeah, they were like, I gotta get me one of those, and I'm like, come on, baby, let's do it together. And we're joking, we're jiving and whatnot, and then 2 or 3 more porters come up the mountain. I think they were like a water resupply, and they're kind of walking past us, and they say something in Swahili, and everybody starts laughing. And I kind of look over there, and the guide said, he said, you look like Jesus.
Do you remember that? The 4th day camp, and he had all of his disciples right below him.
Below him.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about Instagram. And so, we were laughing and stuff and everything up to that point, and he said, and everybody's laughing at what they said, Swahili, he looks like Jesus, and everybody started laughing, and I just got dead faced, and I looked at all 15 of them, I said, I am. Those porters were just like, damn, I don't know if this dude's Jesus, but he's getting to the top of this mountain. And that was kind of like, that was the first day. That was, that was the second day of, kind of our trek up the mountain. And every day after that, and I think I just spent time outside of my tent because I was rooming with Steven. Yeah, you can imagine. So I stayed out of my tent, hung out with those guys. We played checkers and everything, and everybody kind of got involved with getting to know people, and talking, and maybe having someone translate and whatnot. But I guess they thought I was, 75% Jesus and 25% robot. But beautiful people. My best experience from that entire trip was the people. It was the people. And summiting was wonderful, to be a great example to my fellow veterans, to my children, to build confidence in my own mind, because we're all walking around here just trying to figure this whole world thing out and like life. And that's okay, and it's okay to admit that. But I'm glad I summited. I'm glad I came back and was able to show my kids pictures and everything like that. But my most favorite thing were the people. And I know I'm speaking to a room full of adults with different life experiences and such. And I know that in the end of the day, if you actually think about anything that you're actually proud of, it's either something that you thought you were going to fail at, but you overcame, and it was very tough, and it took suffering and pain, but you attacked it and you took on the challenge, or it was because you had a beautiful connection with people, your fellow human being, whether it's your kids, your wife, your girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, mother, father, and those relationships. Because at the end of all this, I mean, when I was like a 10-year-old kid, I would have conversations with like 80-year-old people. For some reason, I just happened to be around a lot of old people, like my grandparents, my friends' grandparents out in the country. And at the end of every day, at the end of every conversation, what I took away, even as a young kid, 8, 9, 10, 11, was, wow, all these stories are talking about people and their connection with people and, their human interaction with people, whether it's strangers that they'll never see again. I'll never see any of those porters ever again. But I guarantee you, and this goes for everybody here, Matt, Adam, Steve, Desiree, we will remember those porters until the end of our life, because it was that connection with those people that made that whole trip worth it. And that's the honest to God's truth. That's gospel for me.
Awesome.
To give you a better description of Cam being the mayor of Kilimanjaro, we all, to some extent, interacted while we were hiking with the guides and the porters, and in camp, there was some interaction, with the guides and the porters. This guy was more like Forrest Gump when he was running across the United States. The first camp, we're all, hey, high-fiving a couple porters. The second camp, like Cam described, Cam's sitting up here on the stage, and there's 15, 20 porters down there that he's discipling to. And then every single camp it just kept getting bigger and bigger. Mr. Cam's over here playing checkers, we had 60 porters. Between the guys and the porters, we had 60 people supporting our group, our team. By the end of this thing, I'm pretty sure all 60 of them at some point were surrounding Cam while he's over there holding court. Actually, this just popped in my head. So Adam made it down the mountain. Adam and Matt and Desiree, Dan made it down the mountain quite a bit before I did from the summit. And then I came down with 2 or 3 porters, no fanfare. Again, I just went back to the tent and cried. And a little while later, while I'm there crying and texting my wife and yelling at her for letting me go, I hear like this parade coming down the mountain, and it's this guy. No shit. You told me this yourself. As he's coming down with his own porters, more porters are going up the mountain to meet him, and it just turns into Forrest Gump running across the United States. And this guy comes in, they're singing and clapping and raising all kinds of hell coming into camp.
Yeah, it was that story he just told was very spiritual for me. It was, and it's true, and it was comical. It was tears of laughter and joy and sadness, kind of, that it was over. This tears of success. Glad to be back together. The portion that he left out. And I'm just going to lay it out there because I'll never see most of you guys ever again. But I guarantee it after this. So when you get up to that kind of elevation, your body says, all right, asshole, we're gonna make you pay for this, okay? Your legs, your arms, your body. We got up there as they described, and we got up there as a team. And then it's pretty much, you got to start making your way down after like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because your body just starts being weird. You vomit and whatnot. So we were getting Desiree down, and she did a great job. She was going down, 2 of our other teammates, the Doc and Dan, they got punch drunk, elevation punch drunk. And so they're trying to get around this crater, bouncing off of like the crater wall, and it's a 1,000-foot drop. And I'm like, that dude's breaking some ankles here in a second. It's 3 o'clock in the morning in downtown DC. Some of you guys may have dabbled last night. So, and then Adam and Steve took off, and I did a little ceremony for my veteran buddies, my fallen, warriors. And so then I start trekking down with the guide and those couple porters. So the portion that was left out of this, and
Probably could still be left out.
no, we're gonna do this together. So my body turned on me. We got up together, no problem. But when I started coming down, I started shitting my guts out, And what it is like when you're at 20,000 feet. I mean, everybody was on that pain train for like 5 days. Let's just be honest. But when we got up there, my body, like, the amount of air that is just in your body, I don't know where it's going, but it's either getting smaller or bigger, but it didn't ask me what I wanted. And so it was 9 hours to get to the summit. We all high-fived, like, hey, I love you. I hope I never see you again. And then we turned around, and it's 5 hours to get down. That's 14 hours total. So they all take off. I'm a couple minutes behind them. For the next 3 hours, I am bent over just like this, in just writhing in pain, just from cramps, air, bloating, I don't know, taking pit stops. You can imagine.
But probably shouldn't.
Yeah, well, it's part of the story. But I get 3 hours down, and that's when the porters, we were kind of hanging out, and one or two, a handful more, the 20 porters came up or whatnot. And I'll be honest with you, this is the spiritual part of it. I'm an old classic movies buff. I'm old school, John Wayne movies, Cary Grant, all those guys. Everybody, a portion of you guys have seen Lawrence of Arabia. That's what I felt like. And it was a spiritual thing that happened to me there, coming down, because what happened was they kind of surrounded me and we were going down this real loose rock, and it's an old volcano. And so it's all this old obsidian, whatever, volcanic ash. And so there's no real hard footing. So you almost just have to go. You can't half-ass it. You got to go, and you got to put one foot in front of the other, and you got to keep going until you stop, take a break, and then go. You have to go forward. And they all surrounded me, just in case I were to tumble. And one of them looked at me. He didn't speak very much English, but he looked at me, and this is after 3 hours worth of pretty bad pain. He looked at me and said, "We're your mountain soldiers." And you want to talk about sucking it the hell up? Like when that Tanzanian porter looked at me, some dipshit from Georgia, and said, "We're your mountain soldiers." And I pretty much felt that no matter what happened there, we were gonna do it together. We were gonna succeed together or we were gonna fail together. I felt like Lawrence of Arabia in the movie. And if you haven't seen the movie, you should. One of the greatest movies of all time. And so we went down the mountain, and that's when they came out of their huts and they started cheering. Wonderful, beautiful, lots of great tears. And then I went to find Steve, and he was still crying in his tent. But yeah, it was a beautiful, again, it just goes back to the people, but yeah, mayor of whatever. Shanty town, you know.
2 more questions. First one for Adam. Will you or MPLB climb Kilimanjaro or similar again?
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. I know I asked Matt that same question, several times, because he talked about bringing his kids, and I guess the long and short of it is I've done it. I don't feel like I need to go do it again. But if my son, came and said, "Hey, Dad, I'd like to go do this with you," I would be all about doing it again. And it was such an incredibly, profound experience for me, and I think everybody on the team really, that I hope we're able to provide the opportunity for other veterans to go do this again. Yeah.
Awesome. Last question, one with Matt. What's the biggest takeaway from your perspective from the trip?
Well, as I've listened to the commentary here and I was reminded of a few of the events and stories we had up there during that 8-day sojourn, a few things come to mind, and one thing was constant throughout this journey and really every day since then is that the men that you're listening to on stage here, I think it's very rare that you get a chance to meet true warriors, actual living heroes. These are American heroes who went and fought for us, and that's the whole reason why we have this amazing freedom and what the best country. I'm biased, I guess, but best country in the world to live in, and I think in particular great that here we are in the nation's capital and so many flags are flying, really in honor of what I think we all love, which is that freedom. So to have experienced this with them, and I had met Adam and got to know Adam, but certainly our friendship went to a whole new level on this journey. And then to get a chance to meet Steve and Cam, and that was the first time we met, was the night before we started the hike. And by the end of that, you realize you now have 2 new lifelong friends. And all because of the fact that they have a greater amount of courage than I would argue probably any of us in this room, given what they did prior to that, but obviously just taking on that expedition and getting to the top. So the inspiration associated with that is just, it's incredible. It's immeasurable. There are 2 other takeaways. The one Cam hit on, and that is the people. And Steve referenced the number, 60, we had 60 people supporting us, guides, people cleaning the porta pots, chefs, porters, and all the above. They were carrying so much stuff. So the fact that they did that with such joy, and then when you heard what they got paid, it was the equivalent, the porter got the equivalent of $150 for that week, before tips, but $150 for 8 days of work. And it probably was more like 9 or 10 days of work from prep on the front end till they got cleaned up on the back end of the journey. And from the first moment we were with them, they were literally singing. And every night when we came into camp, you're singing and they know everybody's names and they're grabbing your bag, they're hooking you up and they're back in your tent, wanting to give you a snack, all the other stuff. The hike, the summit day, they were literally, a couple of these folks were literally walking up the hill backwards, singing to you the whole way. This, your word, beautiful, that's very accurate. The people are incredible. Like, they truly love what they do, and thus they're really good at what they do. They have a passion for what they do. You probably can pick up on a few themes within those words. The third thing that I took from this was the last day, and everybody at this point just wanted to get to the bottom. Like, you're muddy, or not muddy, we're dusty and like whatever. Just like, all right, we did that, now let's go to the bottom. There's a clean hotel on the other, a clean bath rather, and a nice hotel on the other end of this. Let's go get a warm meal in a more refined setting. So halfway down, that was a 13-mile day. So it was actually the longest day, I think, and all downhill. And these guys are, and I've got a picture in my presentation tomorrow, but they're literally leading from the front. Now, Adam, by this point, has got a staph infection going. Steve has already mentioned the incredible pain that he was dealing with and ultimately had got to its highest point by the time we got back from Summit Day. And Cam's foot is bleeding, like literally, like toenails and like not in a good spot. Rough. Things are not feeling well. They're leading from the front with a smile on their face. Go. Halfway down that day, there's a group coming up. They're just starting their journey. They're on day one. And it was a group of Iranian tourists that are also looking to complete this expedition. Well, we took a break at the same spot. And during that break, the interaction between these soldiers and warriors and heroes and those Iranian people was truly remarkable. They all wanted pictures with Adam, Steve, and Cam. They were engaging in conversation. And to credit their natural humility, we're excited to engage with all of them. And I thought, how interesting that we have an area of the world which clearly these men could choose to despise forever, and yet they didn't. And these folks were just engaging, and I was just really, of all of the things that occurred, that was a top 3 moment to watch that level of engagement and just the world coming together in a peaceful moment with a common goal and a common interest, and that was to not only support each other and what we were trying to accomplish, but to truly engage and love the moment. So,
Awesome. That is the last question, and I could sit up here forever and just listen to stories. Appreciate it, but we do got to keep moving on. But I want to thank, personally for me, learning about not just the hike up Kilimanjaro, but what you guys have done and accomplished. Just getting to that point and the way you live your lives, it's certainly inspirational for me, and I think everyone in the room can agree. Thank you for coming. We totally appreciate it. If everyone could give these guys a round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Real quick before we wrap up too. Yeah. Let me just sneak behind you here.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did as we were working our way up and then ultimately back down this mountain was carry some things that were important to us. And the higher up you get, the more you start thinking about what's important, what can I shed, because this stuff's getting heavy. One thing that was always going to make it to the top was this flag. And it's a MPLB Outdoors flag, but everybody on the team that completed the hike signed it in appreciation for you and MITRE support, because this would not have happened without you. So we wanted to give that to you, Matt, and thank you so much for making this happen.
Thank you. And Steve, wow. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're off, dude. So I did reference earlier that the inspirational or maybe drive to keep alive speech that I had with Desiree the night before, but that was serious. I said, hey, Desiree, when we get to the summit, we're going to both contribute $19,341 to the foundation. MITRE Brands is going to match that, and we're going to make sure that MPLB has a couple more years, at least, where other veterans are able to go do what all of you did to create that inspiration and to set course for what can be done. So it's our vision that you get to go find wonderful veterans for the next couple of years that can go accomplish this and create their own new memory and set course rather, inspiration and vision for those after them as well. And with your support, we'd like to have a MITRE team member or two go along each year
Oh, that would be
to be a
awesome.
part of that.
Oh, incredible gesture. I really appreciate that, Matt.
You bet, man. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right, we are, Sean, my apologies, way behind schedule. So you can tell me where people got to be and when. Probably
You guys good to
15 minutes.
skip lunch? How many hands? Promotions available.
Okay, so if you guys can take as quick a break as possible, Annapolis 1 through 4 is directly behind us.
Hey, man.
You're awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it.